if you can't do the computer screen. And a lot of people, that's not their deal. Some people need audio, some need visual, some need hands-on. We need to break open K through 12. Because if we do this right, what will happen is the public education systems will realize that they've got to step up their game. And that's the way to do it. When I was on school board, I learned that you don't put on a big white hat and say there's a new sheriff in town and expect things to change. It won't change. You've got to create a desire, a fire in the belly within the organization. And that fire in the belly has to touch the teachers and the parents so that the kids get what we want them to have. And what we want our kids to have is a foundational education, not an indoctrination into critical race theory. That's silly. Let's make sure that they know how to read, right? Let's make sure they understand history. What's wrong with having a course on how to be of good character? That's what a lot of the private schools are doing. And we don't have to quibble about what it is to be a good character. We can just go back and we can take some of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, Ronald Reagan, Teddy Roosevelt, FDR. We can take Democrats and Republicans alike. But we have got to get serious about what's happening to our world. So we've gone through three. We said public safety, we said secure elections, and we said school choice. There's another three. First off, if after the riots, if we didn't start to reflect on how do I keep my family safe, how do I keep myself safe, if we haven't reflected on how important the Second Amendment is, then we must be literally sticking our head in the sand. So we have to elevate Second Amendment rights. And we need to do it in a way that we haven't been doing it. Because the legislature, when I was in there for 4 years, we were never allowed to have a conversation. We were always told, I remember after the Parkland shooting, because I got some hot water on that one. Parkland, bunch of kids killed. Horrific. I was in Florida at the time. We get back. Thousands of parents are coming to the Capitol, and they want a conversation. They want to talk about public safety. What can we do to keep our kids safe? They were worried that their school would be next. They wanted to talk about how do we harden the targets? Can we let teachers carry if they have a permit to carry? Because right now, if you have a permit to carry and you're a teacher and you don't get permission from the superintendent, you can be fired. We need to have these conversations. I was told, as a rookie senator, ignore them, they'll go away, they always do this every time after a shooting. I said, I didn't run to be a senator to ignore thousands of parents that come down here. So I did the one thing I could do to compel a conversation. I allowed my name to be put on a proposal, and when I did, I told the author, I will not vote for this, I will not support it, but I'll give you 1 month. Work with the NRA, work with the Minnesota gun owners, work with Republicans and Democrats, and let's see if there's something we can do. Nothing happened on that bill. A month later, I took my name off it. In 2019, I submitted a bill for Stand Your Ground, and I couldn't get a hearing on that. When I was in the Senate for 4 years, we never once had a vote on any gun bills. We never once had a committee hearing. We ran scared. That's exactly not what President Trump did. President Trump drove the dialogue, he engaged America, and he said, we're going to have the conversations. You may or may not like it, but we're going to talk about NAFTA, we're going to talk about NATO, we're going to talk about DACA, and we're going to talk about the wall. That's what we have to do going forward. We can no longer hide. So when we talk about our Second Amendment rights, I will tell you right now what I want to get done in the first session when I'm governor. We will pass a Stand Your Ground bill. We will pass a constitutional carry bill, and we will pass a bill to ban red flag legislation. That's what we'll do. And we will rewrite the emergency powers. Now, the emergency powers are a big deal to me. You wouldn't know this because it was behind the scenes politics. But in 2020, May 18th, was the last day of the session. We were meeting Sunday morning. I remember I spent a lot of time talking to a guy named Jake Duesenberg, driving in from Carver County. Jake is head of a group called Action for Liberty. And we were talking about what could we do to get emergency powers out of Governor Walz's hands, because it had been 2.5 months and neither Jake nor I thought that there was an emergency that required those powers. But the way the bill was written that we're operating on, it's a terribly written bill, but it was both the House and the Senate had to veto, otherwise the governor got to keep them. And Jake wanted me to bring it up on the Senate floor. And I said, well, I want to, but I said, they won't recognize me unless I can get permission from the caucus. And he said, ignore the caucus. I said, I can't do that. So I talked for an hour with Jake, then we got to caucus, and we had just a knockdown, drag-out fight that day in the caucus. And I lost a couple of friends because I was so passionate that I thought we needed to put this on the Senate floor and send a clear message. That day, the Senate Majority Leader said, Scott, we'll whip the vote among the caucus. Will you be willing to abide by the vote? I said, okay. So quietly, a couple people in our caucus went around and asked everybody, you want to go along with Doc and submit this on the Senate floor, or should we wait and go ahead and get the budget work done? And I lost. And I'd given my word, so we did not present it. That bill that I wanted to present has now been offered about and discussed a lot as a pledge. You may have heard of it. Well, I don't sign pledges. I won't sign pledges. If I did, by the time I'm elected governor, I'll have 500 pledges I've signed. What I will do is tell you what I think about something, what my position is, and I will read bills. And I had the bill that they built their pledge off of. So, do we need to write emergency powers all over again? Yes. And this is the way it should look. The bill should have several clauses, and I'm trying to get it rewritten right now. The first thing is both the House and the Senate should have to say yes, or you lose the powers. It's got to be affirmative.
Yeah.
The next thing, if we want for 30 more days, the next time it has to be a supermajority. And it has to be 60% in both the House and the Senate. Now that's where I think the pledge stops. But I don't think we should stop, because I think we should go, the next time it should be 75%. We want to make it harder and harder for a governor to be able to keep the powers.
Yeah.
Now think about it. You got to think about it carefully now. If we've got half of Minnesota underwater, or all of northern Minnesota burning from forest fires, and we really do have an emergency, you are not going to see House members and Senate members vote based on being Democrat or Republican. They're going to do the right thing, and they're going to say, this really is an emergency, so you probably would get 100% on both.
Yeah.
So we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
So people ask me, would I be able to successfully get these rewritten? Well, sure I would be able. Here's what I'd be doing. I'd be, as the governor, going to the legislature and saying, never again should we have you taken out of the loop. I want to give up some of the power that comes with being governor, so please strip me of some of my power. You think they won't? Of course they will. So we can get this done. And when we do that, then we'll have the bill done. Now there's another, as long as we're talking about pledges, there's another one out there about the vaccine passport. People said, why won't you sign the pledge? I don't sign pledges. But what I am doing right now is I'm getting a bill written right now, that will deny emergency lockdowns. It'll deny vaccine passports. It'll deny vaccine passports in the private industry sector, and it'll deny masks in school.
Yeah.
That's what this bill's going to do. We need to get the bill written. So if Governor Walz calls a special session on October 1st, we shouldn't wait till next January or February to drop this bill. Dropping means submit. We should submit this bill in the Senate right away. Because what it'll do is it'll foment discussion. And that will help all of us. A pledge won't help us. A bill will. We can push that bill around social media so everybody knows. And we can make it better then. Because that's how a bill really gets good, is when you get different sets of eyes on it. So that's another issue. We've talked about the spending issue. Average wage increase over the last 11 years is approximately 25% for the average person. Minnesota budget went up 75%. So you got a raise of 25%. State legislature gave them themselves a raise of 75% in terms of spending. Can't happen. And then I want to get to the topic that's near and dear to me as a scientist. Never again should we let science be sacrificed at the altar of pandering political science. So I'm not going to talk all night about COVID, but I want you to know 3 things had to happen in order for us to be scared silly. The first one I mentioned, death certificates had to be robust. We need to have a lot of deaths. Second thing, we need to have the hospitals diagnosing COVID-19. The third thing that needed to happen is we needed to have a test that would give us a robust number of cases. And then we needed to run it in a way that we get positives even if they weren't positive. And that's what we got with our PCR test when you cycle threshold 40 to 45 times. So those were the 3 things. Lots of deaths, lots of hospital discharges, and lots of positive cases. The fact of the matter is, New York Times, which is left-leaning, came out and published that in this one area in New England, they did 1,000 positive tests. And based on the way they'd done those tests, they felt quite certain that 85% of those were false positives. 1,000 people were told they had COVID-19 when only 150 had them. These are the things that have been ginning up the numbers so that we think that, we're losing the battle. We're not losing the battle. You want to know what a lost battle is? A lost battle is 1918 with the swine flu epidemic. That swine flu went after people 20 to 40 years old. We had a lot of soldiers coming back from World War I. They had succeeded in living through World War I, and they died of influenza trying to get home on the packed rail cars, the ships, the trains, because that's what that nasty influenza virus did. It went after 20 to 40-year-olds. Now, nobody likes to say this, but this COVID-19 doesn't do it. It goes after fragile people over the age of 75 with multiple medical problems and multiple medications. And I take care of a lot of those because I'm not young and I've gotten old with my patients. And you know what they tell me? They say, I am so glad it picks on us and not the children. And they say, and I hope that down there, Dr. Jenson, you would never shut down government and businesses and tell people that they are not essential and they have to close down so that you can squeeze one more year out of my life. I'm comfortable living whatever the good Lord has for me, and I don't want to be doing this. Do you know that it costs $250,000 to die in Manhattan, but it only costs $45,000 to die in Dubuque, Iowa? That's because of the kind of attitude we have. We need to remember that when Paul said, oh, death, wear out our sting, he wasn't just talking mamby-pamby. He was talking about how we're supposed to live our lives. We are wired to be autonomous. Ronald Reagan said that when government expands, liberties contract, and we're living it every day. So that's where we're at. We've gone through the issues now. There's one last issue that we have to talk about, and that's this thing called freedom. There's a movie a long time ago that talked about Pay It Forward. And it was all about the kids. If you think about it, think about what we were given from our parents and our grandparents. Think of the rich life we've had. I remember I'd go play at the South Park and Mom would say, Scott, come home when the whistle blows, we'll have dinner. And I remember when the lights in the park went on at night, Scott, it's 8:30, come home. Think about these words. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Our posterity is really who we're fighting for. We've got 4-year-old kids having to wear masks for hours at a time. We've got parents and families having to shut their business down and not be able to pay their bills and being told, don't worry about it, we can get you some PPP. They don't want the PPP. They want their business, they want their dignity. They're not interested in having government do this. Ronald Reagan said, there's something unique about our Constitution. He said, we were the great experiment. What we did with our Constitution is we laid out for the government what they got to do. But in almost all other countries, the Constitution lays out for the citizens what they get to do. And it's a huge difference. We said when we did our Constitution that if it isn't specifically prescribed for the federal government, then they don't get to do it. But they're doing it. And you had read, Deanna, did I say that right now?
Yep.
You had read at the beginning from the Declaration of Independence. And you talked about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. How in the world can we have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as unalienable rights endowed by our Creator if we're told you have to do this, you have to do this, you can't do this? This is craziness. So we are really in for the fight of our lives when it comes to freedom. We had a freedom rally, health freedom rally, a few weeks ago at the Capitol, and I see some familiar faces. But you know who's really been putting the crosshairs on this last round is the nurses. I mean, the same people that were vaunted heroes 15 months ago are now being told, we'll throw you under the bus unless you violate your core system of values. That's craziness. And that's where we're at. So, those are the issues. We can talk about those later if you have questions. But we got something else we have to talk about. And that's this thing called elections. Conservative values don't have to be Republican or Democrat. The word conservative comes from the word conservare in Latin, and it means to safeguard. What we're about is we're trying to safeguard the kind of life that we think Americans should be able to live. And we're trying to safeguard our Constitution and not let it get bantered about by the winds and waves of people who are engaged in trickery. So, for 25 times in a row, conservatives have lost statewide elections. 25 times in a row. So, in medicine, if you keep doing the same thing you always do and expect a different result, I've got medication for you. I do. I can help you. I promise. So, the bottom line is, we've got to do something different. And Trump did that. Trump said, I'm going to drain the swamp. Now, I don't talk like that. I'm not quite as bombastic as President Trump. I like what he did, but I think that I just have a different style. But what we need to realize is, I think this time around, we need to elect someone that's not interested in being a career politician.
Yeah.
I think we need to elect someone that's unique and will talk plain about the issues. And when he makes a mistake, or she makes a mistake, we'll just tell you. And we'll own it. And we'll speak truth to power. And we'll behave like a pit bull with a pork chop. And you're not getting it away from me. I want you to know, I was wrong about where the Wuhan virus came from. I thought that it did come from a natural reassortment. For the first 6 to 9 months of this pandemic, I thought that it was most logical that it was probably an assortment between some sort of aardvark-like animal, possibly a bat, and a human. I don't think that anymore. I think with the information we've gotten over the last 4 to 5 months, and the fact that it looks like there's a signature of 5 or 6 base nucleotides on the tail end of this virus, I think this was a laboratory-generated virus. I don't know how it got from the laboratory to the whole world. I was wrong on that. And another thing I was wrong on was 3 years ago, when I was first asked about critical race theory. I thought that this was a fad that would pass. I thought that it would go away like Common Core and some of this other stuff. I was wrong. I'm grateful to so many of those parents who kept at it, who kept raising it up saying, this is a problem. Because it's a huge problem. And now what we have to do is we have to turn it into a win. And we can. Because quite frankly, we are awakened, and we're not going to let this happen again. And it isn't just critical race theory. It's terms like diversity and equity and all these other words that are just hot button words, but nobody can define them. Why don't we just use a word like unfairness? If we see an unfairness, let's correct it. But let's stop with the bickering and the accusing and the name calling. I am not a white supremacist. May I have been unfair in my life? Sure. But I may well have been unfair to the Norwegians because I'm a Dane. So let's do something different. This time around, no more career politicians. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to cast a wider net. What does that mean? Well, Ronald Reagan said we got to build a bigger tent. You know, you may not realize this, but the minorities in the Twin Cities area, they're conservative. They're about faith, family, freedom. They want limited government. They're pro-life. They want to be able to honor their God. They need to be with us, and we need to tell them. We need to invite them. You know who else we need to go get? The millennials and the Gen Zs. And you know how you get them? You don't talk down to them. You don't tell them that they should think the way we do. What you do is you tell them, you're smart in ways I can't dream of. They can do that Rubik's Cube 3 times and I can't do it once. If my phone or my computer goes down, the last thing I want to do is talk to a 66-year-old white guy. They need to be a part of us. We've kicked the can down the road. We can do a whole lot better with them. There's no reason why we can't have a 28-year-old be a commissioner of some department in state government. Who else should we go get? I'm looking at them. The Republicans have not done well with women. We have disrespected you. You've come to the Capitol and wanted to talk about a variety of things. And we said, if we just ignore them, they'll go away. We cannot do that.
Yeah, that's right.
There are studies out there that indicate that if you're running for campaign, you're running for political office, you better go get the women's vote, because a woman's vote is not one vote, it's 1.1, and the males are 0.9. And the reason for that is because in a lot of households, it's the women that are taking care of the health of their family. They're watching the school. They're doing a lot of those things. No question about it. The men frequently will be able to speak a little bit more, perhaps, to federal issues and ESPN. But when it comes to family and kids, you got to pay attention to women. You really do. And we got to do a better job. And we're going to. The DFL, they're a little bit in shambles. They don't know who they are. Bill Clinton today wouldn't have gotten into the DFL party. Yeah. No, I don't know if he would have gotten into any party. But anyway, if we take the phrase DFL, I think we can excise the F and the L. The farmers, they have not been served by the DFL.
No.
So I've been to Farm Fest, I've been all over Minnesota. I just did 12 cities on Sunday and Monday, and I talked to them, and I talked to the farmers about respecting agricultural economy, what it contributes to Minnesota. The government has been a fickle partner for them. Succession planning is huge for farmers so that they don't have to sell their family farm to a corporation. By the time they pay their estate taxes frequently, they have to fracture the farm. That's got to stop. We got to find a way to do it. Corporatizing agriculture is not going to be the answer for us.
No.
We need to help get connectivity out in the agricultural areas so they can do the things they can do. We need to make sure that people in the agricultural areas like me, sleepy-eyed kid, I need to know what the opportunities are in agriculture. If I want to be in finance, I can do that in the world of ag. If I want to be in running a business, I can do that in the world of ag. If I want to be in sales, I can do that in the world of ag. We need to start educating young people that they don't need to leave their small communities in order to have a wonderful career.
Yeah.
And if we get the kind of connectivity we should, there's no reason why you can't have a lot of internet businesses based out of Sleepyhead, Minnesota, just as well as North Minneapolis, and you'd be a whole lot safer in Sleepyhead, Minnesota. And the other thing we need to do, beyond expanding our base and getting more votes, we need to energize you, not for today, not for tonight, not for this week, not for this month, but we need you for at least 400 more days. And you need to talk to people, and you need to say 2-3 people every day, you know what, Minnesota is not on a good path. This is not sustainable. We are seeing a volitional effort to excise God out of our lives. We're seeing laws being proposed that don't allow us to have "In God We Trust" above the school doors because it's a public school. We're going to all levels of ridiculousness, and it's got to stop. That's what we need to do. We need to energize you. You might wonder, well, what should we say about you, Dr. Jenson? Well, if you see someone on the street tomorrow, just tell them this. Hey, I met a Norwegian, a Dane, from Sleepy-Eye. He's not so bad. Try that. Okay. Friends, as a family doctor for 40 years, it has been a great privilege for me to experience the trust of my patients because they know that I'm going to be their advocate as they move through that healing process. And healing isn't always easy. The fact of the matter is, it's seldom easy. But I've never had a patient that lost 25 or 50 pounds that they'd wanted to lose, or gave up the smoking habit, or beat cancer, that didn't appreciate the fact that they had traveled that journey. As your governor, I think that we together can heal Minnesota. What would that look like? Well, it would look like safe streets, not defunding the police. It would look like school choices and kids dreaming dreams and getting foundational educations, not being indoctrinated into some new wave theory. It would look like elections being fair and trustworthy rather than shenanigans and distrust. It would look like science would be elevated and never again sacrificed at the altar of political pandering. That's what healing Minnesota would look like. And as fellow citizens, if you and us come together, we can heal Minnesota, but it's going to have to be a groundswell movement. This has been historically a blue state. But if we work together, you and I, we can heal Minnesota. Thank you.
we're going to take a break, but we need to cover a couple of three things before we do that. Number one is we are not live streaming this because we use YouTube to live stream, and they don't like what we say on nights like this.